Michelle Lestas, entrepreneur, business owner, and now author, has written her first book, In Business with Yourself. You're very welcome.
Thank you very much, Bill.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
Michelle, this is a book about running and leading an effective business, and it starts out at the deep end, where you say running a business is about more than function, it's more than marketing, sales, finance, and so on. What do you mean?
Well, I think we come to business with our life experiences. We operate businesses and we bring all of those attitudes, ideas, our culture with us. And so I wanted to get across in the book the importance of that, and that we don't leave that at the door, and we bring that into our business. And sometimes that can have a good impact and sometimes not so good. And whichever way that is, I talk about how you really need to be aware of it and how you move that forward.
Interestingly then, you go on to state that businesses just don't run along the same path. We are often coached in business about how it moves from startup to growth to more established. And you really challenge the fact that one shoe fits all. You talk about 8 different types of business identity.
Well, I think identity is such a used word now in our society and as individuals. It's all about how we identify. You know, are we vegan? Are we environmentalists? What are we? And so I wanted to use that in the book to talk about leadership and how we run our businesses, and how important that is in terms of identity, and bring it into that arena. And so it really is about that, and I created 8 of them, which run as a theme throughout the book.
Yes, when I read it, I was really interested in the hobbyist. Is it a very common one?
Absolutely. There are so many people who go into business as a result of a hobby or a craft or an idea that they have, something they've maybe been doing on the side, they've been doing it for years, and they've perfected that hobby or craft. And so they come into business, somebody has said to them maybe along the way, oh, that's a great idea, why not make a business out of it, make some money out of it, which is great and all very positive. But the downside of that then is, as a hobbyist, it's all about you. And so when you look at businesses that come from that perspective, many of them are quite small, micro businesses, because it can be quite hard to let go. And so I talk about that. I talk about that across all of the identities. What are those sorts of things that are holding you back? And then how can you overcome some of those? You know, there's no reason why a business that's a hobby cannot be a multinational company. People have done it. The White Company is a good example, or there's lots of them. So it can be something you can do. It's just how you overcome some of those obstacles.
I'm down to ask you, which business identity are you, please?
Oh, I have to be the lifer.
How so?
Well, I suppose I grew up in a family business, very much part of what I'm about, very much as I would talk about part of my DNA. But typical of a lifer, I also then went on to have a career that was very erratic along the way, jumped from one job to the next, and then finally decided to settle into business. I give a good example in the book, actually, of a very strong lifer, Sir Alan Sugar. And Sir Alan, as you may well know, started out his career very young. And as far as I'm aware, he started out by selling floor mops, buying them in for 50p, selling them on to his neighbour for £1 and making a bit of money on the way. Started there. Then he went on, of course, to build up Amstrad, and he's now working in the apprentice programme. So very much someone who's been in business all their lives and a lifer. And so, yes, I would sort of say I'm very much a lifer.
Is there an identity that you most admire among the 8 that you identify?
Well, I suppose there's no real specific one. I think they're all very relevant depending on the sort of business person you are. But if I had to pick one, I would probably pick the game changer. It's as it says on the tin really. Someone in business wants to change the game. They want to have a mission, they have a passion, they have a message, and they want to bring that out in the business they run. Not always about the business, which can be a downside, but more about the message. So a really good example would be the likes of Anita Roddick, who built the Body Shop in the 80s. I remember well walking along Oxford Street, heading into the Body Shop with my little bottle of plastic bottle to get my face cleanser and get it refilled. And you went into the shop and it was about the recycling, it was about the fair trade. It wasn't really about the cosmetics. And so the problem is, whenever the business stopped using that message and it was sold, I think it very much lost its way. Yeah. And so the game changer, I think, is a good one.
You look in quite some depth in chapter 3 and 4 at the comfort zone associated with each identity. I find this a fascinating angle and something very, very different.
Yes, I think it's not something that business people often think about. We get sometimes very comfortable with where we sit in business. So, for example, in the book I talk about the business person who's the innovator, the creator. I refer to them as the blue skyer. You know, very thoughtful thinking, bit of a risk taker. But the issue with them is that they really like that creation. And creation is very much at the sort of the startup part of the business, the sort of the early growth stage. And so that business owner can get very caught and stuck in that mode. And therefore, it's very important to be aware of it for a start. And I look at that across all the identities. Be aware of it and maybe do something about it. So I make the suggestion maybe for the blue skyer that they look at bringing in someone who's a lifer, someone who's all about the business, not about the creation. And so that balance can bring a really interesting dimension to the business. So just to be aware and move that on.
You also talk about the importance of relationships throughout the book, and you focus on business coaches and how they are not always what they seem.
Interesting, given I've had a career as a business coach. But yes, I make that an important point within the book. As a business coach, you know, I can often go into a new business, never met the business owner before, and within 20 minutes, I know really private aspects of that business, from the finances to the operations to the people, which is all very good, and you need that level of honesty. But, you know, there's no scrutiny, really, of who those business mentors are. And so I reach out and ask business owners to think about that in the book, and also to think about maybe the identity of the coach and their identity, and think about how that perhaps could complement. And sometimes when a business coaching relationship breaks down, it can sometimes be because the identity doesn't work.
Yeah. Well, so why now? What has inspired you to write the book In Business with Yourself and offer this fabulous insight and program to the business community?
Well, as I say, I suppose I grew up in a family business and I operate businesses as well. But I think more importantly, I've had the real privilege of working with some fantastic businesses, good and growing businesses, and those not growing, but very committed business owners. And so over the years, I've gathered up quite a few observations, a few tips along the way. And really, I want to share those now at this stage and try to help people, not always to have to learn from their mistakes, but to actually learn from what has gone before. And so I put that forward, and very much trying to help people move from just surviving in business to thriving. And as we now go into this unusual space that we're all in with COVID and a pandemic and people being made redundant and business is not doing so well, I think it's really important that they're aware of what they're getting into and do it, great, but not before you read my book.
I agree with you there. I can see where the book might also be relevant now to a lot of people who are home working due to the pandemic. A lot of the ideas obviously apply.
Absolutely, and when you think about it now with people who are working at home, they really are solo self-employed people. You know, they've lost their structure, they've lost the way they normally work. Maybe communication systems are not brilliant. They don't have the support of their colleagues. And so, yes, I think they're very much a new type of self-employed. And so I think the book's very relevant for them to read.
Yes. You write very, very helpfully about a number of different, less glamorous parts to business, and particularly about loneliness. It's not something often discussed in the adverts for self-employed and promoting business startups. You mentioned the statistic that a striking 48% of the solo self-employed that work from home feel lonely, with 46% feeling isolated. And I quote from the book here. The blue skier, the hobbyist, the academic can be particularly prone to social isolation, as certainly in the beginning you tend to operate as sole trader. Whatever the circumstances, when you first go into business, it can feel very lonely. What seemed like a good idea when you were commuting to work for 3 hours every day on packed public transport suddenly feels daunting. I say suddenly because it is. One day you work in a long organization with a lot of employees and a team around you, and then, well, it's you on your own.
Yeah, absolutely. I wanted to bring that out in the book, actually, about the aspect of it can be a very lonely space. Yeah. Even when you're surrounded by lots of staff and people and others, it still can be quite lonely. You're taking a lot of decisions yourself. And I think in some ways we glamorize it a little bit. You know, young people, I think, look at the likes of Bill Gates and what they've achieved, and they think, oh, I could do that. It's almost like it's part of this reality TV, which is fine in some ways, but the reality of business is it's hard work. You have to be enduring, you have to have a bit of stamina, so you need to go into it, I think, with your eyes wide open and think about really what it is you want. And for many people, you know, over the years, I've met people who'll say, I think I'll go into business. I want to be my own boss. I want to do my own thing. And you do get to do that. And that's a very exciting part of it. But, you know, when you borrow from a bank, who's the boss? When you have an investor, who's the boss? Or when you just have, you know, fairly demanding customers, which they have a right to be, but maybe they're the boss. So it's really about seeing through that, and I challenge that a little bit within the book.
Yes, I think you do. So what next for you?
Well, as I said before, operating and coming from a business background, I just want to really share some tips and ideas and make the book come to life a little bit. So I'm working really hard at the moment on a series of master classes, which will be available for business owners and business leaders.
Where and when is the new book available to the business world?
Well, it's going to be in the usual places and Waterstones, on Amazon, and it'll be on Amazon as an ebook as well as a hardback. And then also with Orpen Press on their website, the publishers.
Well, the very best of luck with that, and we wish you all the best. Michelle Estes, thank you very much for your time. And I would just say this to finish. I would say that the cover design, the striking title, it'll make the book jump out of the bookshelves. Congratulations again to you and to Orpen Press, your publishers. A brilliant business tool and concept.
Thank you very much, Bill. It's been a pleasure.